I'm Marissa Castaneda,
And I am Izzy Almazan.
and we're going to be talking about Princess Mononoke or Mononoke Hime.
Okay.
All right, so first, as a group, research more about the Emishi and explain who they were. So they resisted multiple Japanese emperors during the Asuka, Nara, and Heian periods, which is 7th to 10th century. And they were also involved in the Sanju Hachinen Senso, which was a 38 years war. That's like one of the main wars that they were involved in. And I believe there was one of the Amishi was like a top like general in that war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And continuing on with it, there's also been a Emishi Anu theory. Considering the fact that Anu were considered great warriors, they could have also interacted with them at one point to prevent Yamato expansion. On a further researching on that theory, apparently Ainu were also hunters and fishermen that would interact with the Amishi. Some would even migrate from parts of Hokkaido into parts of Honshu, where like they could have integrated and they could have lived together. And maybe there's a theory that they're somehow connected, but there's no claiming evidence that actually is for sure about that information.
Yeah, yeah. They also had different war styles if when compared to the Emishi Izumo theory. And it is speculated that they spoke a they were ethnically Japanese, but they spoke a different dialect, which is the Zuzu dialect that was from as an ancestor of the Tohaku dialect.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference also is where like the theories kind of like contradict is the Emishi were horse archers and warriors and great warriors, while the Ainu were just great archers. That's what they were known for.
Mm-hmm.
And what's it called? So another theory, according to the theory, the Emishi and are the Izumo Japanese, which got pushed away from the by the Yamato clan, which is like the beginning of the main Japanese dynasty, and they could have fought together to push away this dynasty, but obviously it all failed because that's the dynasty in place right now.
Right. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next question. Summarize the three conflicting ideas demonstrated by the three main characters in the film, and report the most likable character and the least likable one from the three as a group, and give reasons. And also then suggest what the least likable character can do to improve his or her likability. We're going to discuss the first half, and then we're going to cut on to a next slide. So we will start with summarizing the three conflicting ideas. So did you want to go first, Marissa, or shall I?
Yeah, I can go.
Okay.
So with San, she was more preservation of the Shintoism as she was more connected with the gods. She did want to protect nature, but her focus was Moro. I believe that was the name of the wolf god.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was just her goal was to protect them.
Yeah. The next one is preservation of nature with Ashitaka. Ashitaka wanted to preserve nature by solving the curse between Lady Eboshi and San's hatred for humans that had been created. Um, it was very important for him to also try to figure out where his curse came from and finding out that it was from the pain of Nago and him kind of being the unbiased one between Lady Eboshi and San, but also trying to help them. That's why he wanted to preserve nature.
Yeah. And then lastly, Lady Oboshi was basically the destruction of nature in attempts to obtain power. Uh, she wanted to pursue greatness, but she obviously destroyed nature trying to achieve this greatness. But yeah, so there was just it's basically the three conflicting ideas of all the three main characters.
Yeah, quite a triangle mess.
Yes, three very conflicting.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. Um,
Report the most likable character and the least likable from one of the three as a group, and give reasons. Suggest what character is the least likable, and what they can do to improve their likability.
um, so first and foremost, I just want to say this to Fukuda Sensei. This was very hard because I liked all three characters, um, but in different
Yes, me
ways.
too.
So this was actually very difficult for me, but if I had to look at it from a different perspective of just having favorites, I think the most likable would actually be Ashitaka. Um, he was the one character where he technically wasn't on either side, but he was doing it for the greater good. He and I'm gonna quote basically to see things with eyes unclouded and um, not having a biasism towards anything.
Yes, I agree with you because he wanted peace, and then San and like Iboshi's hatred just created like this curse in of itself,
Mm-hmm.
and it caused a lot of issues. And then for Iboshi, I don't think she was necessarily a bad character. She just went about it wrong, like in the wrong way. But
Mm-hmm.
it was also the most human way, as that is just how people gain like power and greatness. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I actually really liked her character, especially because even though she had a selfish desire to destroy the forest to kind of improve upon Irontown and get more resources, she also had a kindness and hospitality towards like the prostitutes, the men, and then the people with Hansen's disease there. So if I had to give her one thing to make her likable, maybe it's just her having a kind of a different, distinct empathy towards like the forest and understanding that she can still have um, more power, but she doesn't have to destroy everything in her path to do so.
yeah. And then also something else that she could have done was she could have like I guess like talked it out. Like she could have tried to work with the gods, but the gods are very fickle. Like they're just that's just how
Mm-hmm.
they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so like she could have somehow gained their favor, and then it would have like essentially empowered her more if she had the gods' favor. And
Yeah.
that's just something I thought of when I was doing this.
No, I definitely agree with you. I just think the problem with her though is she only thought of it for herself. She didn't even want to consider the gods because like I remember in the film her wanting to be like, yeah, I really want to kill Moto, the wolf god.
Yeah, she does.
So
She makes it like her whole goal too. So yeah, you're right.
yeah, so that's the only thing that I was just like, I don't like you for that reasoning. Like, yeah, she does need to have more of an empathy, and maybe then she could talk it out. That's where I agree with you on that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Moving forward on the next question. As a group, choose one unique Japanese cultural value that is different from all your group members' cultural value systems. Describe one selected cultural value and the scene. So, I don't know if you
So,
know
oh no,
Fukuda
go ahead.
Sensei. I don't know if you know this already, Fukuda Sensei, but me and Marissa share one brain cell for the most part. Um, so this is actually a very difficult one. So Marissa, if you want to continue on that, but I just had to comment on that.
Okay, so a unique cultural value. Well, that's the question we're on, right? Making sure
Yes.
my PowerPoint's different. Okay, yeah. So basically, Japan has this way of like wanting to preserve nature, which is the Shintoism, which is one of the main bigger religions in Japan aside from Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
So they have that core value of preserving nature, and when you compare that to America's cultural values, we don't necessarily preserve nature in and of itself. We kind of just push the problem away.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that with Japan's recycling. It's very organized. It's categorized, and it's something that everybody does
Yeah.
because it benefits everybody. While in America, it's very chaotic. There's no system. Many people don't even know the system of how to recycle things correctly.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We as Americans have kind of been lazy about that. I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't any at all, but
Oh no, yeah.
we definitely haven't been doing it the way Japan is, where they sustain nature, they respect things like having like a small little shrine, and if something knocks over, they clean it up. They don't just leave it for someone else. There's always responsibility in that, and that's something that I feel like America lacks. So,
Yes, I agree with you. And I guess you can. I guess a way so that we can see this value in a scene in the movie is when Ashitaka at the end, when they've returned the Shishigami's head, and he says that there's nature all around us, and you're able to see that, and that just because the gods are gone doesn't mean that what they represented is gone. It's
mm-hmm.
still there, and America doesn't have those type of values.
Mm-mm. I think that also can sort of go hand in hand with like religion in America versus Japan. Um, that was something I also kind of noticed in the cultural value that they don't have to go to churches and such. They can go to shrines to pay their respects. Whereas like in America, we go to church because like we feel like we have to see it, live it, breathe it. But like for them, it's like
Yeah.
to know something's there is enough for them. So
Yes,
that
it's more spiritual in a way, I guess.
yeah, and I think that's something I can admire about them. So
Yeah.
all right, okay, moving on to the next question.
Discuss the sneak peek scene 3 and find out the group's differences in interpreting the meaning of Ashtaka's tears. What are the 3 important lessons that you learned from these differences? Also, did the interpretation change after watching the film? If so, how? Well, our scenes are very similar, but I do have to say, my interpretation of his tears, I said that I think the young man is frustrated about something as he cries.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Once I saw the film, I realized that it wasn't frustration out of whether the fact that he was feeding her or anything like that. It was that he was just frustrated that he wasn't able. The Shishigami didn't cure him, and basically his whole situation was just due to Eboshi and San's hate, and he had to solve that without the gods' help.
Yeah. Um, I completely agree with you on that. That interpretation was um, pretty important to him. Like you, before I watched it, I was just like, okay, he's probably ticked off that he can't eat that food, and like as a man, it's like, no, I got to do this for myself. But then after watching the film, I agree with you. He kind of had like what any normal human being would have, like, why is this happening to me, and why can't I fix it? Um, so I think that was kind of a personal struggle for him in that moment. Um, as far as the 3 important lessons that I learned from our differences, um, I guess as far as just how you saw that the relationship was some form of familiarity, and that I saw her kind of more as a caretaker role. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
maybe because
Yeah,
she.
and then also, oh no, go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead, go ahead.
Just the fact that the way we interpreted the scene, just not just his tears, but um, we're basically we saw the scene from like we took a step back and we were able to see it as a whole. That's like another lesson that we took from it,
Mm-hmm.
as we got more context to it.
Yeah.
So,
Um, I think we got more context from one another, and I think that's what helped us understand the meaning of the film more so. Like, rather than just looking at it, ew, she's feeding him food, how disgusting. We saw it more in the role of, no, this is someone that's taking care of another individual, especially somebody who really hates human beings, by the way. Um,
oh yeah,
I thought that was kind of a big thing, a big deal. Um, So her being concerned for him really took a big thing, which we can discuss in the next question, of course. Um,
Yes.
so I'm kind of struggling for like a third important lesson here. um,
Well, I think I basically had kind of said it earlier when just the fact that kind of like you can't expect somebody to like solve your problems because that's what Ashtika was kind of expecting the god to do.
yeah,
But gods are fickle and they're never gonna do exactly what you want them to do.
yeah, like
And
yeah,
he wanted like an easy solution to his problem, but that wasn't gonna happen. He needed to work for it.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I think we got all three.
Okay, okay, all right. Moving on to the final question. Select one character, find his or her tatme, and imagine his or her hone.
So we chose Sun for this.
Yes.
And a way that we saw this was that basically San had this her tatemae, like her actions was that she hated humans and she was more with the gods than humans. However, like internally her honne was that um she saw Ashtika and that she saw I guess like herself in a way that they were very similar. And so, yeah, like that was really her honne. Like she just kind of had like feelings.
Yeah. She basically grew up in a forest without other human beings, and of course Moro kind of teaching her that humans are disgusting and learning how the way of the forest is preserved. Yeah, so I wasn't surprised to find out that internally, I mean, from the way she grew up, that basically she hated humans. But then when she comes across Ashitaka, it kind of changes against that. Um, and I guess kind of in a way, it kind of reminds me also like she didn't feel like a social obligation to help Ashitaka, but something inside of her was just kind of like telling her that he's okay to save. Um,
Yes,
and
and then even Moro even said that like you have a future with him, like to be a normal human, basically.
yeah.
And that's where she had like an internal struggle with that because she basically always had like this tatemaya of like hating humans.
Mm-hmm.
Those were her actions because she hated Lady Aboshi. And then suddenly she had the internal struggle with her honne of like she cares for him and they're just similar in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think that's pretty much the basis for it. I don't know if there's any more to that, but yeah, I definitely agree with you.
yes. Yeah, I think we got it.
I think we got it all. Rating for this movie, 10 out of 10, because you just can't beat a Studio Ghibli film.
Nope, you can't.
um, I can't hate it. I already own the DVD. Um,
Yeah, me too.
and I can appreciate watching it rather than like Disney because like I got to actually see all like the gore in it. So
Oh yeah.
yeah.
And it's just something that I liked that we got to go over this movie and learn more because when I first watched this movie like a long time ago, I knew there was more to it. I
Mm-hmm.
just didn't know how to go about learning it.
Right.
So I'm just glad we got to go over this movie and like get down to like the nitty gritty of like cultural values and the emishi and just it's nice. It's nice to learn more about this.
Same. And I'm gonna put this out there, and like this is gonna be like a big eye roll shocker. I actually hated this movie. Like I owned it because I wanted it to be in my series of Studio Ghibli films, but I
Yeah.
actually didn't enjoy it because like every other person that I've known before, they're like Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle are the best movies. But now diving deeper into the background of it, it's like I have a higher appreciation for it now.
There's just so much and you can see like the effort that Miyazaki put into it. And it's just like especially when I was looking up the Amishi, you can see that he did research for it. Like it's
Yes.
there, like the effort that he puts into the characters in Ashtaka, and then like the very beginning with the scene with the boar. It's
Yeah.
all there,
Yeah.
so it's just nice.
It really was. So, okay. Well, thank you again for joining us on another film discussion.
Yes, thank you, Fukuda Sensei.
Yes, thank you, and I hope you didn't have like a major eye roll at the struggle of this discussion.